Today we are going to be looking at the notions of dominance and merger control in the European Union. The EU competition authorities not only wish to prevent undertakings entering into restrictive agreements, they also seek to prevent undertakings from abusing positions of market dominance. A market dominated by one or a small number of undertakings is said to be heavily concentrated. Market dominance can arise in one of two ways. One, by an undertaking acting alone, gaining market share through natural market progression, or two, by an undertaking acquiring or merging with other players in the same market. The merger of two previously independent undertakings is referred to as a concentration, as it can lead to an increased concentration on a market. Now let's have a look at control of market dominance achieved through natural market progression. Article 102 provides that any abuse by one or more undertakings of a dominant position within the internal market or of substantial part thereof shall be prohibited as incompatible with the internal market insofar as it may affect trade between member states. Thus, to come within the Article 102 prohibition, two elements are essential, namely the existence of a dominant position on the relevant market and secondly, the abusive exploitation of that position of dominance. Now let's have a look at dominance on the relevant market. The European Court of Justice has defined dominance as a position of economic strength enjoyed by an undertaking which enables it to prevent effective competition being maintained on the relevant market, giving it the power to behave to an appreciable extent independently of its competitors, customers, and ultimately consumers. In order to determine whether an undertaking is in a position of dominance, the Commission must first of all define the market in which the alleged position of dominance is to be measured. This is referred to as the relevant market. The relevant market is subdivided into two markets, the relevant product market and the relevant geographic market. The relevant product market is made up of the market in the products in which the alleged dominant undertaking is active. For example, if an undertaking sells bananas and is alleged to be in a position of dominance, it first has to be decided if the relevant market is limited to bananas or whether it can be defined more generally as the market in fresh fruit. This is significant, as the undertaking might have a 65% share of the banana market, normally a position of dominance, but only a 10% share of the fresh fruit market, not normally a position of dominance. Clearly, the narrower the definition of the product market, the more likely a finding of dominance. In this regard, a relevant product market is said to be the market comprising the products in which the alleged dominant undertaking trades and all other products that can be considered as interchangeable or substitutable by the consumer with these products. Thus, to decide the scope of the relevant product market, the Commission considers two factors. One, the essential characteristics of the product. If another product shares the same essential characteristics, then it will normally be considered to form a part of the relevant product market. Secondly, the interchangeability of the products from the point of view of consumers. If consumers consider the product to be interchangeable with another product, then both products are said to make up part of the same relevant market. For example, if the price of bananas was raised by 5 to 10%, would a consumer, instead of spending more money to acquire a banana, buy an apple in its place? If the answer is yes, then both bananas and apples will be considered as being substitutable or interchangeable products in the opinion of consumers, and thus will form part of the same relevant product market. When testing to see whether customers are willing to switch to another product on the market, the Commission carries out an analysis of what is called demand-side substitutability on the market. If there is a willingness to switch demand, there is said to be a high rate of interchangeability on the market, and the market is said to be elastic. If there is not, the market is said to be inelastic. For example, if an increase in the price of butter leads to improved margarine sales, then the butter market is considered to be an elastic market, and there is said to be cross-elasticity of demand between butter and margarine. The term cross-elasticity of demand thus describes the extent to which customers are willing to accept similar goods as a substitute. Now let's look at the relevant geographic market. Article 102 is only infringed if the abuse of dominance occurs in the internal market or a substantial part thereof. The relevant geographic market is said to comprise the area in which the undertaking concerned is involved in the sale of the product and in which competition conditions are homogeneous. Now let's take a look at how dominance is measured. Once the relevant market is defined, the EU authorities will examine whether the undertaking is dominant in that market by measuring its market share. Dominance is frequently considered in the context of or by comparing it to the market share of the other competitors on the market. For example, if a market is atomistic, i.e. it is characterized by the presence of a large number of operators, each possessing a small market share, then an individual operator on that market having a significantly larger market share than the other market players is more likely to be considered as being in a position of dominance than if the market was less atomistic in character. When attempting to measure dominance, the Commission will also look to see whether other operators are able to enter the relevant market. In inquiring as to whether other suppliers are able to switch production to enter the relevant market and begin to compete with the alleged dominant undertaking, the Commission is said to carry out an analysis of supply-side substitutability on the relevant market. The term cross-elasticity of supply thus refers to the extent to which undertakings other than the dominant undertaking are able to supply alternative competing products on the market. In looking to measure the extent of cross-elasticity of supply on the relevant market, the Commission will look to see whether there are any barriers to entry on the market, i.e. whether other suppliers can easily enter the market. A market in a product that requires significant financial or technical investment to produce the end product is said to be a market with a high level entry investment or technology barrier. To the contrary, a market characterized by a low investment entry requirement is said to have a low entry barrier. A position of dominance on a market with low entry barriers is obviously considered to pose less of a threat to competition, as the presence of potential competition should curb the dominant undertaking's instinct to act abusively. Once we've established dominance, it's then necessary to show abusive exploitation of the dominant position. Under Article 102, the existence of a dominant position is not in itself prohibited. In order for the prohibition to come into play, the dominant position must be abused. Article 102 sets out an open-ended list of such behaviour, but the list of potentially abusive behaviour is endless. For examples of abusive behaviour include charging excessively high prices, charging excessively low prices, a refusal to supply or alternatively to subject the supply of products to unreasonable conditions, for example, tying the supply of a product to the purchase of other products. Now, let's take a look at control of dominance resulting from concentration, i.e. from mergers or acquisitions. Control of concentrations is carried out by way of Regulation 139/2004. A concentration is deemed to have occurred where there is a change of control on a lasting basis resulting from the merger of two or more previously independent undertakings, or the acquisition of direct or indirect control of the whole or parts of one or more undertakings, whether by purchase of securities or assets, by contract or by any other means. Thus, for an operation to come within the terms of Regulation 139/2004, there must be an acquisition of lasting control by another undertaking. In this regard, the authorities take a de facto approach as to whether control has been acquired, i.e., they look to the reality of the situation and do not restrict themselves to a legal definition of control. Once the condition as to lasting control is met, in order for EU jurisdiction over the transaction to be triggered, the operation must also meet the thresholds set out in the merger regulation. Once these thresholds are met, the transaction must be notified to the Commission for approval. There are two separate, non-cumulative threshold tests, and the duty to notify arises when either one of the following two tests is satisfied. The first test requires that all the undertakings involved in the concentration must have a combined worldwide turnover of 5 billion, and at least two of the undertakings involved must have an aggregate regional turnover of 250 million euros, unless all the undertakings involved achieve more than 2/3 of their aggregate union-wide turnover within the same member state. If the transaction does not come within the above thresholds, then a second threshold test exists, whereby the European Union's jurisdiction can be brought into play. Under this second test, 4 basic criteria have to be established. 1. All the undertakings must have a combined aggregate worldwide turnover of not less than 2.5 billion. And 2. All the undertakings together must have a combined aggregate turnover of at least 100 million in at least 3 member states. And 3. At least 2 of the undertakings involved must have a minimum of 25 million euro turnover in the same 3 member states. And 4. At least 2 of them must have a minimum of 100 million euro turnover in the European Union, unless all the undertakings involved achieve more than 2/3 of their aggregate union-wide turnover within the same member state. An operation meeting the threshold set out in either of these two tests is said in Eurospeak to have a community dimension. Community dimension mergers are subject to exclusive one-stop shop control by the Commission, and normally the national member state competition authorities will have no jurisdiction over such operations. We hope you enjoyed this introduction to the notions of dominance and merger control in European Union competition law.